Hello, everyone. This is your host, Susan Rosen, and my guest today is Jonathan Sue, and he is going to tell us all about knees, which for those of us of a certain age or older, is very important. So welcome, Jonathan, and let us know more about yourself.
Thank you, Susan. So I'm Jonathan. I'm a physical therapist, yoga therapist, and fitness professional. I'm a former U.S. Army officer who was the officer in charge of human performance optimization, rehabilitation, and injury prevention. I was in the military for a total of 11 years active duty, so I saw a lot of knees in my career.
Yeah.
And then my spouse and I decided that we wanted to start a family, so we left the military about 7 years ago. We have two boys now, a 6-year-old and a
Oh,
4-year-old. And I work with a lot of older adults with knee pain.
so out of curiosity, how did you kind of zero in on that age group,
Yeah,
or did they
so
find you?
yeah. So what's interesting is that I ended up with a knee injury about 30 years ago, pretty serious knee injury that the surgeon told me that I was never going to be able to be active after my mid 30s. Well, after proving them wrong, I started noticing that a lot of my older adult patients had knee pain, and a lot of them were, they were trying to avoid knee replacement surgery or other types of knee surgery. And I realized, hey, what I did with my knee, I could replicate that with other people. It worked in the army with younger patients, and it worked pretty well with older adults also.
Wow, interesting. Okay. Okay. So do you want to tell us what the secret is, or?
Yeah, there is a secret. So as we get older, especially
Uh-huh.
people 50 plus, we tend to start having more aches and pains. And these aches and pains, especially knee pain, that's, by the way, the number two most common chronic pain condition, the number one being lower back pain.
I was just
Uh,
gonna say backs.
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, they say that about, 25% of Americans will have knee pain at some point in their life. And
Mm,
sometimes this pain can come on for no particular reason. So you don't even have to have an injury. You could just be coming up and down stairs or walking, all of a sudden you have this knee pain.
right. Like I was telling you about, yes.
So the big secret is
Uh,
that we have to have a maintenance routine for our bodies, especially as we get older. Now, most of us, we know we have to take our cars in to get maintenance occasionally. But what we don't realize is that our physical body needs that also.
okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. So what is the maintenance? Maybe you can
Yeah.
explain and why it is that it works.
Yeah. So, I think one of the challenges we face in the modern world is that a lot of our movements are pretty, repetitive. So most of us move in a linear fashion on smooth terrain. We're either walking forward or, coming up and down stairs. And so what happens over time is that we have certain muscles in our bodies that become overutilized and other supporting muscles that are underutilized. And as this imbalance grows over time, we start having pain without injury, knee pain, back pain, hip pain. And so there are a couple key muscles that are important. One of them is the hamstring muscles on the back of the thigh. And the reason why that's important, because as you're walking, as you're running, as you're hiking, as you're going up and down stairs, you're using mostly your quadricep muscles on the front of your thigh. And over time, there becomes an imbalance. And the quadricep muscles on the front of your thigh, they start to pull too hard on the kneecap and you start getting knee pain.
Huh.
Because if you think about it, when do we actually even use our hamstring muscles on the back of our thighs? Definitely not a primary mover during walking, running, or stairs. So
Mm,
that's one of the secret muscles that we need to start developing to prevent knee pain and to get rid of knee pain also.
okay. Okay. And are there like sets of exercises that you give to your I hate to use the word patients, but because it's not like it's a hospital, but to the people that you help.
Yeah, so One very important exercise I give because some people will go, okay, well I could work on my hamstrings. I'll go to the gym and there's a hamstring curl machine. But the challenge with that type of machine is not using the muscle in the way that it was intended. So in real life, we don't lay on our tummies and curl the knees, bend the knees, or we don't do that in standing either, just standing in a static position and bring our heel to our buttocks. So the exercises that tend to work are ones that emulate the movements in real life. Um, and you kind of position your body in a way where you could utilize gravity to help you create resistance. So my favorite exercise for the hamstring is what I call the heel bridge. So what you do is you simply lay on the ground, you put the back of your heel on a chair with your hips and your knees bent 90 degrees, and you simply push off the back of your heel to lift your buttocks off. Now,
Oh, okay.
what that does is it emulates the movement that you would make if you were walking, but then instead of, you know, stepping forward with your front of body muscles like your hip flexors, you're sort of pulling your leg backward with your back of the body like hamstring and glute muscles.
Mm.
So that type of movement there more closely emulates reality. And what it does is, as you start doing that exercise and you start walking, your body is tuned in more to utilizing that muscle. So you start utilizing more
Oh.
muscles. So you start distributing the workload.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Interesting. So are there other, I mean, is that the only place that something like that goes on, or are there other places, shoulders and things like that, that the same sort of um explanation is not the right word, but of how you can not get pain from picking things up or whatever. Is that similar?
Oh
Obviously
yeah,
different muscles and different ways to do it, but same sort of idea.
absolutely, absolutely. So, I've been a PT for over over a decade,
Mm.
and I've worked with over 50,000 patients at this point. And what I've
Oh
noticed
my
is that the
God.
majority of problems that people face throughout their body are very similar. And they're all,
Hmm.
most of the time, they're due to underutilized muscles that need our attention. And so, yes, for the shoulders, it's the same thing. We tend to use a lot of our front of shoulders muscles
Mm.
and not
Mm.
really working on the back of the body, upper back muscles that sort of stabilize and support our shoulders.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
those are, and that's fairly common because most of us in life, we have our hands in front of us, we're typing on computers, we're on our, smart
For
devices.
sitting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. So I'm assuming that along with all of this that we've been talking about, that there's also how it affects, um, you know, what I notice about myself, my family, right, is that as we get older, we start to do this, right? And the head starts to go forward and the shoulders start to kind of go forward. And I'm always trying to remind myself, okay, no, 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 sit up straight, stand up straight, you know. But I notice it with a lot of people. And like I say, particularly 50, 60, 70, it's like it gets worse as you get older. Are there particular kinds of exercises or things to remind yourself? I just try and remind myself to stand up straight. But you know, excuse me, I'm sorry. Um, I just have started noticing it. I mean, I'm almost 70, so I'm right at that part where everything starts to go wrong. If you don't keep it up to exercising and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Yeah, posture is
yeah.
huge, especially as we get older. And one of the things I think that a lot of older adults don't realize is that after the age of 50, our body naturally loses about 1 to 2% of our muscle mass every year.
Oh,
And what the medical community calls that is sarcopenia, sarco meaning muscle and
right.
penia meaning
Hmm.
loss. And then
Okay.
what happens? is that after the age of 60, we start losing 2 to 3% of that muscle mass every year.
Wow.
So, of course, we got the constant force of gravity pulling us down and we're losing this muscle mass. So over time, our posture starts to collapse down into that force of gravity. And what really is needed is strength training. And I think a lot of
Okay.
older adults don't realize that because I hear a lot of my clients and they tell me, hey, I don't know what's happening. I walk 2 to 3 miles every day. I go hiking 3 miles every day. And why am I getting weaker? And it's because after the age of 50, simply walking or running, even stair climbing is no longer enough to maintain that muscle mass.
Uh-huh.
When it comes to posture, um, it's good to remind yourself to, have good posture. But really, what needs to happen to really get to the root is we need to start building muscle maps in the upper back, in the core muscles, and in the butt
Mm.
and thigh muscles.
Oh, okay.
Because if you have enough muscle mass, you don't even need to remind yourself. You will naturally have good
Yeah,
posture.
right. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, because yeah. I mean I know people who work out, quite regularly, but they still are starting to hunch over. So it's I don't know if it's because they're doing the same training that they've been doing for, 40 years or something. You know, well, I'm just saying, and they're not using or exercising all of their muscles. They're exercising certain ones and that they've been doing for a long time.
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways we could look at that.
Uh-huh.
Um, I think you're absolutely right. Maybe, one thing that could possibly be happening is that maybe they're not working the right muscles
Mm,
because we tend to be sort of addicted to building the front of the body muscles in our culture. We like to do a lot of push-ups, a lot of pushing motions.
okay.
And in fact, if you overwork those front of body muscles, it will actually make your posture worse.
Well, yeah, because you pull it in, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I would first kind of find out, what muscles are you working? What are you focused on? And I think as we get older, we need to start working the back of the body twice as much as the front of the body, or have 2 times more exercises for the back of the body, because those are our anti-gravity muscles in our upper body.
Um,
And then the other thing I would ask is, well, how much resistance are you using? Because if you're lifting fairly light weights where you can, easily achieve 15 repetitions, you're more working the endurance muscles and not the sort of building muscle mass that we've lost or we're losing.
uh-huh.
And so I would say, hey, are you lifting heavy enough weights where you're pooping out by the time you hit 10? And then are you doing that for, 3 or 4 sets at a time? And how many times a week are you doing it? Because I've had patients who are and clients who are in their 100s, and these guys are not using canes, not using walkers. They got great posture. And these, one of the things that I noticed that a lot of them have in common, who are doing really well at this advanced age, is that they've all kept up with strength training.
Mm, okay. Okay. Interesting. So what kinds of exercises in particular would you suggest around strength training? Because a lot of people know, oh yeah, there's all this different kinds of training, but they don't know what strength training, because there are different kinds and different machines or not machines, as the case may be, right?
Yeah, I think machines are great to start with because they're
Hmm.
simple to use, they're safe. And so, anything that involves pulling, like a rowing motion, like a
Oh,
cable machine, or like one of those machines with the stacked weights, or if you're using a dumbbell, you could simply, like, have your one arm and leg on the same side of your body on a bench and using the other arm to pull the weight with your body parallel to the
okay.
floor. But it's got
Uh-huh.
to be heavier weight. So, a lot of people will be like, oh, well, I'm on the rowing machine. Well, that's just not enough resistance to correct your posture and build muscle.
Okay. Which kind of makes sense if you think about it. you know,
Yeah.
it's yeah, I mean, I know everyone's going to say, oh, well, yeah, but I'm doing this and I'm building, and it's like, well, yeah, but
Yeah. Yeah,
it's the
there's
same
some deep,
muscles you've been doing it for so long, right?
yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting because my wife, she's in her mid 40s, and
Uh-huh.
she's a computer engineer, and so she's on the computer all day long, and she was
Oh,
noticing that her posture was deteriorating, and she's like, well,
yeah.
I'm trying to correct the posture, and then so I gave her some exercises to do, same ones I'm recommending here with the rowing, and she did that for a
Uh-huh.
few months. She's like, well, it's not changing much. And so I scratched my head and I watched her perform the exercises. I said, oh, it's because you're not pulling hard enough. Let's increase the resistance. Let's have you, really just, get those muscles working. And then after a few weeks, she noticed a difference. So you can have the right exercises, but if you're not utilizing the muscles in the right way, the change is not going to happen.
Okay. Okay. No, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And if you're because I know for me, I know that I need to start doing that. No, I mean, hands down. I used to always go to the gym. I was really good about it. And two things. I I fell and broke my collarbone. Okay, I was out running and I hit something. I was trying to avoid these other two things that were on the ground,
Mm,
and I didn't see the other one. Went down, hit my head, broke my collarbone.
mm.
Okay, not super badly, knock on wood. You know, I broke the little knob that's in the end, that's all enclosed in muscles. So it didn't actually like fall apart, or it didn't come about apart. So that much, knock on wood. But nobody cared about my head because they were all worried about my my
Mm.
collarbone. But in the meantime, for 3 months or 6 months, I couldn't do anything as far as muscles. I mean, lifting and exercising. And I've never actually gotten back to where I was. So I've got my little, I don't know, my little 3 pound weights, and I've got my 5 pound weights, and I've got, you know, but it's still not working because
Yeah.
I don't really have a program. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm I'm gonna I'm gonna get myself back to a gym and get some help.
Yeah. Sorry to hear about the injury.
Yeah.
And it's so common, to have falls as we get older. And
Mm. Tell I we could spend the rest of the hour just talking about the different falls I've taken. Yeah.
and then especially when you have an injury, or and this applies
Mm-hmm.
also if you've had a hospitalization, or you get really bad
Ah,
food poisoning, or anything that sort of puts your
okay.
body in this sort
Yeah.
of state of needing to recover.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that happens, I don't think a lot of people realize, is that your body actually starts to burn your muscle for fuel, right?
Ah,
Because
no,
you're
I had no idea. Yeah, go ahead.
especially in a state of emergency, right? Because the
Yeah.
body's trying to keep you alive. And so that's why someone can, go to the hospital, and after 2 days they come out and they're significantly weaker. It's like, how does that happen in
Yeah.
2 days, right? It's because your
Yeah.
body's burning your, especially the muscles in your big thighs and glutes. These are stores for energy for the body in case of an emergency. So, the body is a
Oh,
very interesting, multi, purpose machine. And so the muscles are there not just for movement, but also for storing energy and fuel. And so for you to have like a fall and then not be able to use your body normally for that amount of time, it's not surprising to hear that, hey, even now, even sometimes months and years later, the body's not fully back to where it used to be.
yeah.
Um, and, I experienced the same thing with my knee when I was 15 years old. I had that devastating injury. I had to reteach myself
Uh-huh.
how to walk again. And even now, in my mid 40s, even now, I notice that something's going on with the brain body connection where that leg where I had the injury would always be a little weaker than the other side. So I have to constantly exercise that hard side a little harder to maintain sort of balance between the two sides.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. And for me, the thing I've noticed is that this shoulder is just goes down more. And I can do this and bring it up but I can tell that that's not the place it wants to be.
Mm, mm.
You know, which is really it's really kind of funny because you look at yourself in the mirror, you go, wait a minute, I'm not balanced. I'm not. It's like, oh yeah, it's my shoulder.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Your body is is um, is so amazing. It just it just blows me away. With
Yeah. And the cool thing is the great thing is that despite that injury with work you can recover from that. And
hmm
and I could say that confidently because my knee still has a missing ligament that's been gone for, 30 plus years, almost 30
uh-huh.
years. And so I have this laxity, this instability in the knee that's not normal.
Ah,
And and so, today I have no pain. I could I could run, I could hike, and it's only because I keep up with the maintenance program. And so anyone with injury, hospitalization, um, I think as long as they can, you know, get their body tuned up, I think they could still
mm-hmm,
maintain their function at a
mm-hmm,
pretty high level.
mm-hmm. No, that makes sense, and totally explains part of what happened to me was that because I fell and broke my collarbone like I don't know a month before COVID closed everything down, so I couldn't get any physical therapy,
Hmm.
so I never had any follow up on it.
Hmm.
Yeah, which totally, by the time I was ready to do that, they were like, well, no, it's, past the 6 months or whatever it is. You know, it's like, well, yeah, it's been 2 years.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I've always felt like I'm kind of on my own. I
yeah,
gotta figure this out,
yeah. You know,
find somebody else. Yeah.
it kind of feels that way in our current landscape with the healthcare system.
Well, that's true too. It's never has really come back, huh?
It feels that way.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Timing is everything, right? So, yeah, and it, I think the other thing that people need to understand is that you can't do it for a little while and oh, now I feel better and I don't need to do this anymore.
Absolutely. Yes, because I get that question a lot from my clients and patients. They're like, well, how long
Uh,
do I have to do this for? It's like, well, forever. It's like, when do you stop, taking a shower, brushing your teeth, like how many miles do you have to drive? After I reach 200,000 miles on my car, do I not have to take it in for maintenance anymore? It's like, no, as we go along, we probably have to do a little more than we used to. And, but the
mm,
good news is what I've realized is that you start off having to do it multiple times a week. And
mhm,
then over time, you start to reach a good place where you're happy with how your body's working. And at that
mm.
point, you could have a maintenance program where you only need to do it once or twice a week and it still can maintain your function.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know.
So for
And then,
example, sorry.
yeah, go. No, no, go ahead.
Yeah. So for example, it's really interesting. It's like, well, people are concerned as they get older, will I be able to be independent? Will I be able to still keep walking and living by myself?
Right.
Well, it's like, well, one simple thing you could do is let's do a chair squat. Let's have you stand up and down from a chair 20 times in a row, right? And try to work your way up from, having to push off the arms to,
Uh,
pushing off your knees and then all of a sudden not pushing off at all. And now let's say after a few months you could reach 20. Well, guess what? If you could just do 20 a day, then you're going to counteract that muscle loss over time. As long as you could keep doing 20 over the years, you're going to be able to walk.
okay. Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah. So there are levels of maintenance. You don't have to keep going up, adding on when I've done this for 3 months at this level. Now I need to add it.
Yeah, I
um,
mean, I think once you're happy with where you're at,
mhm,
and for most older adults, it's not about, trying to look really great, like have a muscular body, but it's more about maintaining their function and
mhm,
moving, feeling well. And so if you're happy with, hey, I could go walk 2 miles without any issues or a mile,
uh-huh,
um, then you don't need to continue pushing and adding, because that's one of the things with exercise is like, yeah, you gotta keep adding to keep growing.
right.
But the thing is, you also can't stop because once you stop, you're gonna lose it, right? You use it or lose it, and you
Uh-huh.
lose it. And the research shows now that you lose it in as quick as 10 to 14 days.
Oh God, I must not have any muscle mass left. Just waist down, I'm fine. I walk like up, plus or minus 2 miles almost every day. But yeah, but that's yeah. Okay. Okay, you've convinced me.
But it's interesting because you do see that, right? So like if you kind of line
Uh-huh.
up a group of people, 100 people who are 60 and 100 people who are 70, 80, 90, you'll
Yeah.
notice that they get thinner over time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And just the way they stand and do things changes, and not necessarily for the better. Um, it's and and they're always talking about women and osteoporosis, which I totally understand. And my mother had really, really bad osteoporosis, particularly from her waist up. It's like she lost so much height. But she did a lot of stuff. She walked stairs and she did all that kind of stuff. So her legs and her hips were okay, which is a perfect example of what you were talking about. Um, but um, shoot, now I can't remember what I was going to say. How do I exercise my mind? So my brain.
Yeah, it's interesting because with physical exercise, what they find
Uh-huh.
is that it actually helps with the brain too. And so we have these,
Ah,
what they call BDNFs, brain-derived neural
right.
factors that gets
Yep.
released. And so yeah, it's it's interesting. And then going back to the osteoporosis part
Yeah.
with your mom,
Yeah.
one of the things that's really good for osteoporosis is what they call axial compression. So
Hmm.
basically weight along the length of your spine. And
Okay.
because, you can have all the calcium that you want, but the problem is the body is not going to really utilize that calcium to build bone density unless you stimulate that bone density growth. And what that comes from is compression of the spine. So, I'm not talking about like bad compression, but our body needs
Uh-huh.
some compression. So one thing to possibly do is to just put on a backpack when you walk. And
Ah,
that backpack,
interesting.
maybe you could put some heavy things in there, start off with
Okay.
something fairly light, 5 pounds, and then,
Mm-hmm.
occasionally just, every month just add like an extra 2.5 pounds to the point
Huh.
where,
Okay.
you're feeling comfortable, you absolutely
Uh-huh.
don't want any pain doing this, but that will help stimulate uh, the upper body bone density growth.
Oh, okay. Okay. I'll have to try that. Definitely have to try that. Yeah. Yeah. No, my mother, uh, she's been gone now for, I don't know, 10 years, I guess. But she was in her 90s, so, you know,
Amazing.
yeah, yeah, exactly. But she ended up in a lot of pain just because of her bones breaking, and her ribs and in her back in particular. But she got like this. um, and it is interest it is kind of interesting because they one of the things I think that everyone says, oh, especially for women, we should take more calcium. But a lot of things that I read doesn't sound like calcium is the answer, right? It's actually can be negative if you take too much calcium. So I don't know. Is that an accurate way of looking at it, or
Yeah, I think so. I think, there's got to be balance in everything that we do, and calcium's a building block of for bones, so we definitely need an adequate amount of calcium. And
Mhm.
and I think you're right. I think the general thinking is that, oh, I just all I got to do is take the calcium. Um, but also just having the type of stimulation on the bones to put that calcium to use is also important.
Mm, mm, okay. Okay. So is it better to eat foods that have calcium in it? Is that better than taking, these calcium pills that God knows whether they even dissolve in your
Right.
stomach or not?
Yeah, yeah. I think I'm also a nutrition. Uh, I also have a nutrition certification.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so yeah, generally we definitely want to get our nutrients from whole foods,
Mm,
as the absorptions is much higher. And of course, if you can't do that for whatever reason, because it's hard for you to eat certain foods or even access foods for some people, then the next
hmm
best thing is to take supplements. But yeah, I think we always want to just try to get the food as naturally as possible, because there's also some cofactors, right? That some of these nutrients need to be fully absorbed.
Okay.
Yeah, that
Okay.
comes
Right.
along with eating the foods in a natural state.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. That's why sometimes two or three things are in a food because then they all act together to get into into your body or not, as the case may
Mm.
be. So yeah, and it's have women started to get better about working out and you know exercising? Men always kind of seem to be more towards that.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if the younger generation um, is has learned the lessons of us older women.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I tell a lot of my clients, I say, hey, you know, we weren't given a user manual for how to manage the human body as we get older.
Mm,
And a lot of the stuff we've known now for the last, 5 to 10 years, are not things that were taught to us, even though I think they should be taught to
mhm,
us.
mhm.
To be quite honest, I think a lot of the younger generation, I don't think they even think about that. I don't think they think about, what's going to happen in 50, 60, 70, right?
No,
And
you're right. Yeah.
um, what I see a lot nowadays are, definitely there's a lot of, more females, women exercising,
Yeah.
lifting weights. There's even like big companies and apps that just focuses on them, which is a great thing.
Hmm.
But the problem I notice as a physical therapist is that a lot of people are doing exercises that's far too intense or advanced for their ability, their physical
Okay.
ability, their coordination ability,
Uh-huh.
and they end up injuring themselves. So I've
Oh.
seen, like, when I was in the army, we had like young female officers and enlisted folks who are anywhere between 18 and 25 needing spinal fusions. And I have
Gee.
one particular colleague who's now like in her 30s, and she's going to have her second spinal fusion because of the injuries she sustained from trying to, deadlift or, do these heavy
Yeah.
like clean and presses that are a
Right.
trend.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really scary.
Yeah. Especially having to have that type of hardware at that age. If you don't know how to take care of it, then, you kind of go through what she went through, which is now, you fuse a part of the spine. There's no movement there, but your
Yeah.
spine needs movement, so that movement happens at the level above or below, and is more movement than it should have because the other levels fuse and it can't move. So then now that area becomes lax, and now you need another fusion for that level. And
Oh God.
yeah,
Wow. Huh. I yeah. I somehow I hate to say it's logical, but it kind of is because people have a tendency to, oh, if this is good, then five times that is probably better, right?
yes, yes,
Instead of doing it slowly, right? And building it up.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so hard, and it's really hard to get that across to people. I think people fall generally into like, two extremes. Either they're
Uh-huh.
doing way too little, right?
Okay.
And they're not familiar with the sensation of being fatigued from exercise. They don't know what that
Uh-huh.
feeling is like,
Yeah.
and they're scared by it, and they're like, "Oh my goodness, like I feel pain," and I gotta differentiate for them. It's like, hold on here, let's define pain for you. Is it sore? Is it icky? Is it crampy? What does it feel like? Is it sharp, shooting, stabbing? And I explained to them that there's a difference between good pain and bad pain,
Okay.
right? And we need
Yeah.
good pain to grow our bodies, to build muscle and to get in shape.
Uh-huh.
And then there's the other side of the spectrum, where people overdo it. They don't know the limits. And
Mm-hmm.
and finding that balance is hard. I think that, that's sort of like that's why it's important to have someone, if you're just starting out to exercise, it's
Mm-hmm.
important to have someone sort of, guide you a little bit. You don't need to go to a
Right.
personal trainer every week or anything like that, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe just check in with a professional maybe once a month. Or what you do is you just kind of, if you're sort of on that other side of the spectrum where you're not pushing as hard, just push a little harder, stay there for a few weeks, and then just inch your way up. We want to just kind of take baby steps.
Okay. Okay. So, um, do you specifically have a book or an online program or anything, that people can use to do that, to figure out the right things to do in the right order and how often and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I do. So, I have a few books out actually, and
Oh,
I think
good.
for older adults, I think the most important one, if you're looking to build strength, balance, and improve and boost
Uh-huh.
your energy level, I have
Uh-huh.
a book I published 4 years ago called 6 Minute Fitness at 60 Plus.
Oh,
And if you go
I
on
like that.
Amazon, yeah, I came up with that title
Uh,
because I was, at that time working with a lot of older adults. And I realized that unless I kept the program simple, short, and effective, people weren't going to stick with it. Because what tends to happen, as you know, in the healthcare is that, hey, only about half of people follow their doctor's recommendations for medications. And, popping a pill is much easier than doing exercise. So if only half the people are following the doctor's directions for having to pop, for popping a pill, I got to keep the
yeah.
physical therapy simple.
Yeah.
Um, and people tend to like that book. That book has over 2,000 reviews on Amazon. But yeah,
Wow.
it gives people the most essential exercises for building strength as we
Okay.
get older. And so it's pretty straightforward, and it tells you exactly what you need to do on a daily basis. That it could be done in about 6 minutes.
Wow. Okay. I don't mind doing longer, but but that would be a good start, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then for people with like, back pain, shoulder pain, hip pain, knee
Uh-huh.
pain, I have another book called 6 Minute Core Strength. Um,
Oh.
And, it's interesting because the core, a lot of people think of our core as just our stomach, right? Our abdominal
Mm,
muscles, but the core
mm,
really encompasses a whole lot more than that. It also includes, in my definition, the shoulder and the shoulder girdle, the hips. So it's this whole center line of the body.
mhm,
And what I find is that for most of my patients, their pain issues can be resolved by some core exercise, whether it's the shoulder, girdle muscles on their upper back, their abdominal, their hips. Um, I would say 80% of people can reduce their pain
mhm.
by doing these type of exercises.
that 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 makes a lot of sense for sure. Because I think as we were talking about earlier, a lot of times people just um fixate on one particular part, right? They their shoulders bothering them, or their I don't know, their upper leg, or their foot or something. And then the whole body gets off kilter and out of balance. Um, and it is kind of interesting because balance is in all parts of your life is important, and people just don't get that, you know. Um, and so it makes perfect sense that you need to do it for your physical as well as your mental and your environment and everything else. So, which I'm sure you understand, having if you've done any of the meditation and any of that kind of stuff, right?
Oh, yes,
It's
absolutely.
all around it's all around balance.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're out of balance, and it shows, right, in our
Yeah,
society, like
you
on a
think.
global level, and then
Thank
definitely
you.
with the human body. So it's a reflection
Yeah.
of, sort of just
Uh-huh.
how modern life is now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, if you look at the history of the world, it's never it I'm not sure there's a time when it ever was in balance, really. I mean, wars and all of that. This is not new. We've just invented more effective ways of killing people. So, I mean, really, before that it was all hand-to-hand combat, right? There was only so much you could do. Um, yeah. Oh well, going down a depressing area there. Oh yes. Okay, so great. So I will get the names of your books and put them in the show notes for people, so they can find you. And um, yeah, is there anything else you want to like to kind of wrap up and last minute advice?
Yeah, you mentioned earlier that you were suffering from some knee pain, and
Yeah.
I recently published a book last month called 6 Minute Knee Pain Cure, and it
Okay.
talks about those exercises I mentioned,
Oh, good.
for the hamstrings, and also a really important group of muscles that people tend to ignore are the side of hip muscles, the known as the hip abductors and hip rotators, right? No one
Uh-huh.
says, "Hey, I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to work on my hip rotators, right? My hip abductors." So those are important for keeping the knees in alignment, preventing knee pain. Um,
Excuse me.
so that's also something that's available.
Uh-huh. Good. Good. Lots of good reading ahead. Okay. And doing. I have to go along and do it as well.
Well, 6 minutes, so there's no excuses.
Well, that's true. That's true. No, what I need to do is find some place to even lay out on the ground, or our house has a lot of stuff on the floor, books mostly, as you can see. So, anyways, yeah. Well, that it'll give me another I was going to say excuse, but that's not the right word. Um, another reason to go and sign up for the gym again, so that I can use what you got in the book, um, to start exercising in the right or better way for building up the strength, which I definitely need to do. I mean, I can only do like 3-pound weights. Not a good thing. Not a good
Um,
thing.
well, we all start somewhere, and I have no doubt that,
Yeah.
they say that the older adult body can build muscle, right? So a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
they wonder, hey, can I still build muscle? But there's research showing that people who are 90 plus, they can build muscle. So anyone can build muscle.
Okay. Good. I like that. I like that. And if I have the right exercises to do, then I'm not kind of like, oh yeah, well, I used to do this one. Should I do that one now? Yeah, definitely, definitely. Okay, well, I will look forward to looking at your books and going out and getting them. And yeah, so um, is there a website that you want to mention or something for people to follow you or learn more about you? And the only reason I say that is because a lot of people don't read show notes.
Yeah, absolutely. So you could go to 6minutefitness.com. That's six spelled out,
Okay,
6minutefitness.com, and you can find my books. You could reach out to me, and I look forward to hearing from you.
okay, great, great. And thank you for being on. And I'm going to say, which I always say, which is that neither of us are doctors, and this is not to be seen as medical advice. And with that, I will close with my usual, which is that I look forward to talking to everybody next week.